Hello and welcome to Caring for Me, Caring for You, a thought and a prayer for the week. I'm Greg Johnson. I'm the president and CEO of GJP International, which is Greg Johnson Partnerships International, uniting the world in family caregiving. And I'm also a counselor and therapist based here in New York, but I do work with people in many parts of the world dealing with family caregiving, with grief, addiction, and spiritual direction. I'm so glad to have you with me today for a special National Family Caregiver Month program. Every November, we in the United States celebrate National Family Caregiver Month. And I'm delighted to have this opportunity to focus on one piece of our two favorite words, family, caregivers. I always like during this month to spend a few moments reminding us of the many faces of family caregiving. There are so many. And as I worked in this field for now nearly 30 years, I remember what my own impression was when I first began. My thought immediately went to my grandparents, some of whom were still living. I was one of those blessed to know all of my grandparents. And yes, we cared for each of them. Then my parents. And now it's just my sister and me and her wonderful family and mine. That was our journey. But as you see, my first thought went to what I have now become, the senior, the older person. And I'm very grateful that we now have new words for my generation. We can be old, but we are also older and old, because there are more people living into 100. So, yes, seniors are the most commonly thought of. And when we talk of family caregiving, as I speak with people, as I go after funding for others, invariably, as I talk to potential persons, and we talk of family caregiving, the first thing I am impressed by is so many of them want to tell me the story of their grandparents. And so, for that reason, I'm also very concerned that we look at all the faces. And there's so many, I really can't go through it in an appropriate amount of time today. But I'm going to be listing some as we go. Certainly it is seniors caring for seniors or family caring for seniors. But it is also seniors caring for grandchildren, intergenerational, and that's very important topic. In fact, the UN is spending a great deal of time this year focusing on intergenerational relationships, excuse me, of all sorts. In other words, a grandparent and a grandchild. Now, they may not be grandparent and grandchild, but it's that sort of dimension. And that's known as kinship. And kinship had a very big start here in New York. One of the first was Presbyterian Senior Services. And it's a situation whereby they took and built an apartment house for members of their community, where it was a grandparent raising a grandchild or a grand aunt with a grandchild. And much of that had to do with drug, alcohol, and incarceration, quite frankly. But it was a resolution to a reality that had not been named. And it is very, very much the reality. Now, on the other end of that one, it is caregiver youth, children as caregivers. Working with children, youth, is an enormous, enormous joy. Because, first of all, they understand computers better than most of us do. And the gift is they're able to be part of the solution for someone else, but be learning about caregiving, learning about others, caring for others, instead of the generation of just me, me, me. And they are some of the most kind, loving, supportive young people that you can imagine. They can also be very important in helping with cleaning, helping with all sorts of errands. And in doing that, it becomes truly the family engaged in caregiving. Now, we also have long distance caregivers. A number of years ago, I had the great privilege of speaking in Indonesia for a conference of the diaspora as we call it there. President Barack Obama was the keynote speaker, and nearly 10,000 people came back from all over the world to attend this conference on the diaspora. And my topic at that was, what do you do when you can't go home for the weekend? Because quite frankly, from New York to my home in Indonesia, it's 28 hours door to door. So you're not going to do that over the weekend. But there are other responsibilities and emotional responsibilities that people have for their loved ones who are at a great deal of distance. And it's, first of all, acceptance, as always, accepting that this is the reality, but then saying, how can I participate? Well, one is financial. And the fact that they are in another country, it's usually for that reason, as well as education. Also, spiritually. Spirit knows no distance. And in prayer and in love, we can be very close together. And many people understand that. Also, there are things in other countries that are needed. They're able to get them. So it's a question of being part of the team, but not being the primary caregiver. You can't do the leading from far away. Long distance caregivers. People with chronic conditions know no age. So that becomes something that is lifelong and is equal opportunity. Another face of family caregiving. Also, the AIDS crisis was a perfect example of a pandemic, just like the COVID one we had. But in the AIDS crisis, we realized that it was really end of life in what should have been the middle of life. And that was a very trying and difficult period. Caregiving was blessed with one word from that period. Our use of the word family of choice comes from the AIDS crisis. Because what was happening is, and it was sad, and I took me years to truly come to understand it. But we would visit friends even before it was named as a disease. People were in the hospital getting very, very sick and dying. And friends, 12-step groups, colleagues from work, apartment mates, and what have you. People were flocking to the hospitals to be supportive. And then what would happen very often, the family of origin would arrive, and in a few moments would learn two pieces of information that they were totally incapable of dealing with. One, that their child was gay and about to die. And in many cases, they fled, leaving all of us. Well, of course, a hospital, healthcare, needs to document. Who were these people? Well, we were, and still are, families of choice. So that word came out of a very difficult situation. We've just had Veterans Day, November 11th, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. But that brings up the topic of veterans. And unfortunately, the wounds of present-day wars, because of the horror of them, are not wounds that heal quickly, if ever, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. and thus they become a chronic condition. And very often what happens, as many of you know, grandparents, seniors come in to help while the spouse is with the veteran. And so that's a very special type of caregiving. And yet, because of the caregiving world, we had information, we had tools to be used, and they are being used, and we are constantly looking for new ways to help in those situations. I'm in an apartment house, 21 stories. I have a caregiving committee here in our building. Took a while to have it happen, but it was something that was needed. Many of us are single in the building. There are many people who are widowed in the building, and we needed to be responsible to one another. Now, it wasn't a nosy neighbor committee. That's not what it's about. What it was about was being certain that we knew anyone who had or needed any sort of medical equipment. People who were plugged in and needed electricity. Well, what happens if the electricity goes out? Well, all of that were things that we needed to be certain we had. The building itself has security and access to apartments, which is very important, but we needed the human factor. And so we formed a caregiving committee, which we call Know Your Neighbor. Now, it was very interesting when we first started. There was a lot of reservation about it. And so we ended up with we sent out a flyer and asked people to sign up. Well, we got about 27% of the building. And the board seemed very happy with it. I was not. So I did what I do best, and that is I started praying about it. What am I missing? Well, it took about 1 week for the answer to come. I was waiting for the elevator, and all of a sudden the doors opened, and out came a dog walker. Ah, yes, I forgot to put pets on the questionnaire. So back to the drawing board, we sent out another email. It was of that time, and we sent out an email including pets. Today we have 87% of the building as part of the Know Your Neighbor committee. And during that last horrible storm that we had, where a great deal of New York was hit by outages and blackouts, we were able to get everyone who was hooked up to some sort of electrical device out of the building and relocated in some place that was going to have power of its own. Another face of family caregiving. Men as caregivers. That has only grown because it was always the women originally in almost every society. The mothers, the daughters, particularly the single women. And then it was the LGBT community because, well, you had time, so people wanted to say. And there was caring. And it was the AIDS crisis that brought that even more. But now men are joining, and Mr. Sam Simon, who is a brilliant actor and writer, I have had the privilege of working with him for a very long time, doing performances of his work, The Actual Dance, in which he tells his story of his wife's breast cancer. It's not her story, it's his story. What am I going to do? How do I do this? The truth is, because she's well and he has recovered from his emotional concerns, they have the strongest relationship of any two people I know. You want to read about it? It's called The Actual Dance. And you can read the script, you can read a book that's based upon it, and I cannot suggest anything more wonderful. Now, we're coming into the December time, and usually I do a program involved with books. I call it my Christmas shopping. That is one book and one play that you don't want to miss. And if it's being done in your area, buy a ticket and rush to it. It's a superb superb program. The homeless population. A number of years ago, the UN was focusing on that, and I was on that committee. And so I was asked to talk about the caregiving within it. Well, I really didn't know a great deal about it, but there are many homeless in New York City. I live right in Manhattan. And so I began to befriend many of them. And I learned so much. I was so impressed by the love and care of who knew what this one needed and where that one was and what they were going through, and whether it was a physical concern, an emotional concern, a mental concern, and how they were able to help each other with dignity to one another and yet support. A whole essay in and of itself. And then probably the most amazing project I ever had privilege to be involved with was the Angola project. And that is one of the toughest, I guess is the way to say it, prisons in America's system. You can't get into it as a layperson, but we were able to talk to people via, at that time it was Skype and through other technological ways. And what did it come down to? These are some of the most hardened criminals, murderers, rapists, you name it, the most horrible things of humanity. And yet, we had murderers caring for murderers. Stories of incredible redemption is the only words I can use. The gift of caregiving created within that prison system murderers, criminals caring for criminals, because it was one soul caring for another. There was a great deal of healing that goes on, and it still does. I'm kept updated on that from several persons, but it was one of the most empowering events that I have ever had. Now, why do I tell you all of these? I tell you because the person you meet may not have the same caregiving story as you are having. It may not be the same dynamics, but it is the same physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. It is being often a silent patient. And we don't want people to be silent and alone and isolated. We want people to know that in their isolation, in the caregiving situation, they are loved and cared for, and they are not alone. And so, as you look at situations, see the caregiver in that situation and thank them. And remember also, healthcare, the three-legged stool, someone sick, care recipient, professional caregiver, family caregiver. I know many persons who are care recipients who are still doing caregiving for members of their family, playing two roles. I know many professional nurses and doctors who are living their professional life, that's their occupation, and they do it with passion and conviction. But it is empowered and enhanced by their life as a family caregiver and often as a care recipient, because all care recipients are not in hospitals just lying there. It's a very important thing to realize how these roles go one into the other, and it is powerful. So, as we celebrate National Family Caregiver Month, please let's celebrate all the many faces of family caregiving. And now I'm going to conclude with a prayer, once again from our lovely book, Peace Be Still. Reverend Marian Gambardella and I wrote this many, many years ago. It's a very inclusive prayer book. It's not of any given theology, but it is a united gift to others. And then I have a surprise for you. A colleague of mine who is very, very gifted said to me, "So what are you going to be talking about?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to be talking this week about the many faces of family caregiving." And he said, "I'll write a song for you." And that's exactly what he did for each and every one of us. So when this broadcast concludes, stay tuned, because I want you to hear the lovely song, The Many Faces of Family Caregiving. Now, let us pray. O all-powerful, almighty, all-knowing, and all-loving God, God as we understand that word, I come to you with gratitude and joy. Thank you for this day and for my care recipient. Thank you for the strength to serve and to care. And I pray for all the many faces of family caregiving. I pray this day for all of us involved in family caregiving. At times it is overwhelming, frightening, but that is only when I forget you, O God. When I pause, breathe deeply, and center myself in your everlasting love, I am at peace, knowing that you can and will solve every difficulty, circumstance, and issue for our highest good. Walk with me and all family caregivers this day and every day. Help me to feel your divine presence always with me and in me, mind, body, and spirit. Bless all professional caregivers, the doctors, nurses, aides, and all who work in healthcare. Bless their hands, eyes, hearts, and minds in each and every task through which they are called. Help me to help them have the clarity and understanding of my role as a family caregiver in my particular situation. Let us serve in unity and harmony those whom you have given us to serve of love and care. Amen and amen. Now stay tuned for the many faces of family caregiving. And as we always say, onward in love and caregiving. Namaste. God bless. And I look forward to seeing you real soon. Thank you.
In the quiet of the morning light, you're up before the dawn, holding tight to the ones who need you every day, guiding them gently come what may. With every touch, a world you mend, a selfless heart, a faithful friend. Through sleepless nights and endless care, you're always there, you're always there. Hearts that give, hands that care, you show the world what it means to love. Through every tear, through every fight, you are the love, you are the light. Every burden you bear it strong, for those you love you carry on. Oh, you're the strength, the hope we see, the silent hero, the family caregiver. In the laughter and the hardest days, you find the strength in simple ways. A tender smile, a soothing word, your voice the sweetest sound they've heard. Through the storms and through the calm, your steady hands they carry on. For every soul you lift with care, we honor you, you're always there. Hearts that give, hands that care, you show the world what it means to love. Through every tear, through every fight. You are the love, you are the light. Every burden you bear it strong. For those you love, you carry on. Oh, you're the strength, the hope we see, the silent hero, the family caregiver. When the road is long and your spirit's worn, you hold the line, you weather the storm. With every beat of your giving heart, you keep the family from falling apart. Hearts that give, hands that care, you show the world what it means to love. Through every tear, through every fight, you are the love, you are the light. Every burden you bear it strong. For those you love, you carry on. Oh, you're the strength, the hope we see, the silent hero, the family caregiver. Yes, you're the strength, the hope we see, the silent hero, the family caregiver.